The sky has always been the canvas of human wonder and fear. When lightning split the heavens and thunder rolled across the valleys, our ancestors lifted their eyes with trembling awe. In that blinding flash and deafening roar, they saw more than weather. They saw intention, anger, and power. They saw the voice of gods. Why thunder? Why the sky? Among all the forces of nature, storms speak with the greatest drama. Fire may consume, water may nourish or drown, but thunder arrives as if spoken from the mouth of heaven itself. It cannot be ignored. It demands attention. And so, across the world, cultures turned their gaze upward and imagined rulers who commanded storms. Zeus hurling bolts from Olympus, Thor's hammer cracking the clouds, Indra riding the elephant Airavata, shaking mountains with his strike, Jupiter watching over Rome with auspicious lightning, Raijin beating his drums across Japan, shaking the land with sound. Each of these gods became more than myth. They became mirrors of human society, embodiments of kingship, justice, chaos, and protection. The thunder god is never just a storm bringer. He is order wrapped in terror, a father whose discipline comes with dazzling light. To call the storm divine was to make sense of the uncontrollable, to weave meaning into terror. But think of this. Why is it that civilizations separated by oceans and centuries, Greek, Roman, Norse, Vedic, Japanese, all imagined a sky ruler who commands thunder? Is there something in the human mind that demands such a figure? Or is thunder itself so primal, so universal, that it calls forth the same archetype wherever people live beneath the open sky? These gods do not just throw lightning, they judge, they protect, they punish. In them we see the paradox of power, terrifying yet necessary. Without storm, no rain. Without fear, no reverence. The thunder god embodies the law of nature, the fragility of human life, and the yearning for someone, something, above us to control the chaos. And so we begin our journey into the myths of the sky and thunder gods. A journey not only through tales of lightning and storm, but into the human psyche itself. In this episode, we will explore 5 of the most iconic thunder deities across civilizations. We will step into the high courts of Olympus and the temples of Rome. We will march with the Norse across frozen seas, listen to Vedic hymns sung under the monsoon, and feel the drums of Raijin reverberate through Shinto shrines. Each god holds a piece of the story of humanity. Each god reveals how different societies face the same fear, the storm, and turned it into symbol, ritual, and myth. To study them is to study ourselves, our hunger for order, our awe of nature, and our endless attempt to give voice to the silence of the sky. And as you listen, ask yourself, when thunder rolls today, in our world of satellites and science, do we still hear only physics? Or do we still, somewhere deep inside, hear the echo of gods? When humanity first lifted its gaze toward the heavens, what they saw was not emptiness. The sky was alive, a living vault that shifted with fire, rain, light, and shadow. For the ancient mind, the heavens were permanence, stretching farther than the eye could see, a ceiling that both sheltered and judged. Yet into this vast stillness, storms would erupt, sudden and violent, like a hand tearing the fabric of serenity. Lightning streaked across the sky. Thunder cracked the silence apart. Rain fell as if the heavens themselves had broken open. And in that moment, people felt both terror and awe. They heard a voice that could not be silenced. They saw intention where modern eyes now see only atmosphere. Thunder was not weather, it was will. The storm was unlike any other force. Fire consumed slowly, rivers rose or ebbed, but thunder arrived uninvited, with authority that demanded reverence. It shook the chest, rattled the bones, and seemed to shout directly at the human soul. How could such a sound not be understood as speech? For early civilizations, to live beneath the storm was to be in conversation with the divine. No one doubted that some higher power had chosen thunder as its language. That is why, across continents and across millennia, people imagined gods who wielded the storm as their weapon, their judgment, their blessing. In Greece, the thunder belonged to Zeus, hurled from Olympus with blinding certainty. In Rome, lightning was Jupiter's approval or warning, a celestial omen that could decide the fate of empires. In the lands of the Vedic hymns, Indra's thunderclap was victory, the strike that freed waters from captivity and fed the crops. In the frozen north, Thor's hammer crashed against the skulls of giants, protecting humanity from chaos itself. And in Japan, thunder was the beating of Raijin's drums, the rhythm of storms made flesh, both feared and adored by the people who planted rice beneath his gaze. Each of these gods became more than characters in myth. They were symbols of power itself, mirrors of the societies that worshiped them. The thunder god was always more than a stormbringer. He was the embodiment of order, law, and authority, yet wrapped in terror. To hear thunder was to be reminded that power could be destructive, but also protective, necessary, even sacred. The storm was both chaos and law at once. Why then did every great civilization imagine such a figure? Why did the Greeks, the Romans, the Norse, the Hindus, the Japanese, each separated by oceans and centuries, dream of a ruler in the sky who commanded thunder? Perhaps the answer lies in the storm itself. Thunder is primal. It does not require explanation to be felt. Its power is immediate, universal. Every human being, whether in a jungle or a desert, a mountain village or a coastal plain, has stood beneath a storm and felt small. To give thunder a name and a face was to wrestle meaning from that smallness. It was to take chaos and call it justice. And so, thunder gods became judges as much as warriors. Zeus punished oathbreakers with the lightning bolt. Jupiter sanctioned or forbade wars with his signs in the heavens. Indra struck down the serpent that withheld water, restoring balance to the land. Thor's hammer, though destructive, was also used to bless marriages and consecrate life. Raijin, for all his ferocity, was also protector of the harvest. In every myth, thunder is both destruction and gift. It frightens, but it nourishes. It levels, but it protects. This is why thunder gods often mirrored kings and rulers. They defended their people, yet wielded power that inspired dread. Look at the tools they carried. Zeus' bolt, sharp and instantaneous, a symbol of sudden justice. Jupiter's flashes across the sky, read as auspices, divine signs. Thor's hammer, which could flatten mountains, yet also sanctify. Indra's vajra, part thunderbolt, part diamond, able to pierce through both demon and rock. Raijin's great drums, thunder itself embodied as sound. The forms differ, but the message remains. Thunder is not random. It is purposeful. It is aimed. It is divine. Again and again, myths cast thunder gods as warriors locked in cosmic battles. Their adversaries were never trivial. Zeus fought Typhon, a monstrous force of chaos. Indra slew Vritra, the serpent that strangled the rivers. Thor wrestled Jörmungandr, the serpent encircling the world. Raijin beat back demons that threatened the balance of heaven and earth. Storms look like battles, the sky aflame with lightning, clouds colliding like armies, thunder rolling like the drums of war. How natural it was to see the storm as war in heaven, reflected in wars on earth. When thunder gods triumphed above, humanity hoped for triumph below. Yet their nature was never simple. The thunder god protects, but also threatens. He blesses crops with rain, then flattens fields with flood. He defends humanity from monsters, but may punish humanity with storms. He is both guardian and terror, blessing and curse. In this way, thunder gods embody the paradox of power itself. The king who shields his people can also destroy them. Authority is always ambivalent, necessary, but never safe. The echoes between cultures are striking. Linguists trace the names of Zeus, Jupiter, and Indra back to the same Proto-Indo-European roots, suggesting a shared ancestor myth. The archetype traveled with migrating peoples, adapting into new stories, but carrying the same essence. A sky father, a storm ruler, a thunder wielder. Yet even in places untouched by this lineage, Japan, the Americas, Africa, the thunder god still appears. Independent, inevitable. Why? Because thunder itself is universal. It is an experience so overwhelming, so visceral, that the archetype arises again and again without needing to be borrowed. The storm writes itself into human imagination wherever the sky opens and roars. For the human psyche, thunder gods reveal the tension between fear and faith. To project power into the sky was to give fear a face, to make it something that could be propitiated, worshipped, bargained with. But people did not see these gods as purely benevolent. They were dangerous, capricious, quick to anger. Rituals existed not only to praise but to appease them. Bulls were sacrificed to Zeus when storms gathered. Roman priests watched lightning to read Jupiter's will. Vedic hymns poured out to Indra in hopes of rain. Norsemen carved Thor's hammer into amulets to keep evil at bay. Villages in Japan prayed to Raijin to spare their fields. These acts were not superstition. They were technologies of survival, attempts to align human life with the volatile will of heaven. Over time, the rituals became stories, and the stories became myths. Yet even as rituals faded, the myths endured. Today, children who have never known the old sacrifices still know of Zeus and his lightning, Thor and his hammer, Raijin and his drums. The thunder gods have outlasted their cults because they speak to something deeper than ritual. They speak to the universal experience of awe. And even now, in an age where meteorology explains storms and satellites track lightning, the archetype lingers. We still call great disasters acts of God. We still use lightning as a symbol of power, speed, inspiration. Superheroes carry hammers and bolts, their powers echoing the old myths. Companies use lightning logos to suggest energy and dominance. The language of thunder persists because the experience of thunder persists. It is still a metaphor for sudden authority, for unstoppable force. It still reminds us of our fragility beneath the sky. In the end, thunder gods are bridges. They connect heaven and earth, chaos and order, destruction and blessing. A storm is fleeting, but unforgettable. It shakes us out of complacency and reminds us of forces greater than ourselves. By giving thunder a name, by shaping it into a god, ancient people built a bridge of meaning. Across that bridge they carried awe, fear, reverence, and hope. Across that bridge, we can still walk today. Whenever lightning splits the night and thunder rolls, the question stirs again. Is it only physics we hear, or is it, somewhere deep within, still the echo of gods? High upon Mount Olympus, where the mists never fully part and the horizon melts into light, reigns Zeus, Lord of the sky and wielder of thunder. He is the god whose name is almost synonymous with power itself, the figure at the heart of Greek religion, and the template for countless thunder gods who came before and after. To tell the story of thunder deities and not linger with Zeus would be like speaking of oceans without mentioning the sea. His reign is storm, his voice thunder, his will lightning. Zeus' path to sovereignty was neither easy nor gentle. Born to the Titan Cronus and Rhea, he came into a world already poisoned by fear. Cronus, haunted by prophecy, devoured each child the moment it was born, hoping to outpace fate. But Rhea, desperate to save at least one, hid the infant Zeus in a cave on Crete, entrusting him to nymphs and warriors who drowned his cries with the clash of shields. The image is unforgettable. A fragile infant, hidden from the hunger of his father, protected by noise that mimicked the very thunder he would one day command. From his first breath, Zeus' story is about concealment and revelation, weakness transformed into destiny. When he grew, Zeus forced Cronus to vomit his devoured children. With his siblings freed, he led the charge in the Titanomachy, the war that tore the cosmos apart. 10 years of chaos shook the foundations of the world. The Titans fought with mountains, hurling them like stones. The young gods answered with fire and storm. Zeus' weapon, the thunderbolt, crafted by the Cyclopes in gratitude for their liberation, became the decisive force. Each strike split the sky. Each crack of thunder proclaimed a new order. When the Titans were finally cast into Tartarus, it was not just victory, but coronation. Zeus had proven himself not only strong, but supreme. His throne was carved out of conflict, his legitimacy sealed by the storm. That beginning matters. Zeus is not the god of peace, but of order, imposed after upheaval. His lightning is not random. It is law, a boundary marker, a reminder that chaos can be defeated, but never forgotten. Every time the storm returned, the Greeks heard again the memory of that primordial battle. The world could collapse, but it was held together by the vigilance of the thunderer. As ruler, Zeus embodied multiple roles. He was king of the gods, arbiter of disputes, and guardian of justice. But most intriguingly, he was Zeus Xenios, the protector of strangers and travelers. Hospitality was sacred in the ancient Greek world, where a guest might be helpless in foreign lands. To betray or harm a guest was not only a social crime, but an offense against Zeus himself. The thunderbolt became the punishment for broken trust. In this, Zeus's power reached into every household. When Greeks welcomed strangers with food and shelter, they did so under the eye of the thunder god, who turned storm into social contract. Yet the myths also show a god of contradictions. Zeus is a figure of excess, of passion, of unstoppable desire. His unions with goddesses, nymphs, and mortals produced a host of children who shaped myth and legend: Perseus, Heracles, Helen, Minos. Each bore a spark of thunder, half mortal, half divine. These stories are not only tales of lust, but reflections of a worldview. Kingship was fertile, power generative, lineage shaped by divine will. Heroes were not born ordinary, they were the children of storms. Through Zeus mingling with mortals, the boundary between heaven and earth blurred, bringing the thunderer into the fabric of human life. The story of Prometheus is perhaps the darkest lens into Zeus's nature. Prometheus, the titan who defied the gods to give fire to humanity, symbolized defiance, knowledge, and compassion. Zeus' response was merciless, chaining him to a rock, where each day an eagle devoured his liver, only for it to regenerate and repeat the torment. Why such cruelty? Because Zeus understood the gift of fire as a theft of divine prerogative. To allow mortals to hold such power unchecked would threaten the cosmic order. His punishment was not only vengeance, it was warning. Zeus's thunderbolt in this story is the dividing line between gods and men. Some gifts cannot be stolen, some boundaries cannot be crossed. Yet Zeus was not only the punisher, he was also the preserver. In myths like the flood of Deucalion and Pyrrha, we see a god willing to cleanse and renew. When humanity descended into corruption, Zeus sent a deluge to sweep away the rot, sparing only the righteous couple who repopulated the world. The thunderbolt becomes not just weapon, but scalpel, cutting away decay so life might begin anew. Greek society enshrined Zeus not only in myth, but in ritual. His temple at Olympia was a marvel of devotion, housing a colossal statue crafted by Phidias, gleaming with ivory and gold. Pilgrims traveled across the Hellenic world to honor him at the Olympic Games, where athletes competed not merely for personal glory, but as offerings to the thunderer. Strength, endurance, and discipline became forms of worship. In the sweat of wrestlers, the sprint of runners, the throw of javelins, the Greeks saw echoes of the god who hurled lightning and upheld the cosmos. To participate was to commune with Zeus, to enact in miniature the struggle that defined the universe. Philosophers, too, wrestled with his meaning. While poets sang of his passions and liaisons, thinkers sought to refine his image. Xenophanes criticized the humanization of Zeus, suggesting that if horses could draw gods, they would look like horses. Plato and later Stoics began to interpret Zeus less as an anthropomorphic king and more as a principle, reason, logos, the rational order behind the universe. Even as philosophy sought abstraction, Zeus's thunderbolt endured. Whether as symbol of law, reason, or raw power, the storm still belonged to him. When placed alongside other thunder gods, Zeus' uniqueness becomes clear. Indra too was serpent slayer, a liberator of waters, yet his prominence waned in later Hinduism as Vishnu and Shiva rose. Thor, fierce and beloved, defended humanity but never claimed the throne. He was warrior, not sovereign. Raijin in Japan, frightened as much as he protected, but never ruled as sky father. Only Zeus stood as both thunderer and king, his storm not only destructive, but constitutive of hierarchy itself. He is not merely a protector or warrior, but the very embodiment of sovereignty. And what of today? The imagery of Zeus has never faded. His likeness has graced coins, statues, and paintings for millennia. In modern times, he appears in films, novels, video games, his thunderbolt a shorthand for divine authority. The word jovial from Jupiter, his Roman counterpart, still describes a cheerfulness tinged with power. We speak of thunderstruck moments, of acts of God, of lightning as inspiration. Even stripped of temples, Zeus' language remains embedded in ours. Perhaps his most enduring lesson lies in his dual nature. Zeus is noble and flawed, generous and vengeful, protector and violator. He embodies the paradox of authority. It is necessary to create order, yet it is always dangerous, always at risk of corruption. In worshiping Zeus, the Greeks acknowledged this tension. They did not imagine perfection but power, raw, commanding, ambivalent. To honor him was to admit that justice and tyranny often wear the same crown. When thunder breaks today, we no longer imagine Olympus. We know the science of charged particles, the crack of air expanding with heat. And yet, do we not still feel awe? Do we not still hush our voices when the sky speaks? The echo of Zeus lingers, not in temples, but in our instinct to look upward when the storm rages. His thunder asks us the same questions the Greeks once asked. Who holds power? What are its limits? Can order be created without fear? And when lightning splits the horizon, do we hear only physics, or the voice of a god reminding us that power is never silent? If Zeus is the thunderer of Greece, Jupiter is the thunderer of Rome. At first glance, they seem twins, lightning bolts in hand, thrones in the sky, kings of gods. But to leave it at that would be to miss what made Jupiter uniquely Roman. Not just a mirror of Zeus, but a god who anchored empire itself. Where Zeus embodied cosmic kingship, Jupiter became the beating heart of civic order, law, and destiny. His thunder did not echo only through myths. It reverberated in the Senate, the battlefield, and the daily life of a people building an empire. The Romans inherited much from Greece, yet their genius was transformation. They absorbed myths, reshaped gods, and made them instruments of their political vision. So Zeus became Jupiter Optimus Maximus, best and greatest, protector of the state, guarantor of contracts, wielder of thunder. The Romans did not imagine Jupiter as a distant ruler on some lofty Olympus. They brought him into their city, their rituals, their very constitution. Where the Greeks prayed to Zeus for justice, the Romans invoked Jupiter when laws were signed, treaties sealed, and generals marched to war. Atop the Capitoline Hill in Rome stood the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, the center of civic religion. Here sacrifices were made before military campaigns. Here senators gathered to interpret omens. Here the thunder of Jupiter was not metaphor, it was political reality. Lightning bolts striking during assemblies could suspend meetings. A sudden storm might delay a battle. For Romans, thunder was the language of approval or rejection from the highest authority. If Zeus's lightning punished oathbreakers, Jupiter's lightning ratified the destiny of Rome itself. The myths of Jupiter parallel those of Zeus, but with Roman flavor. Like his Greek counterpart, Jupiter hurls lightning forged by divine smiths. He rules as king of gods, husband of Juno, father of heroes. But the Romans cared less for his amorous escapades and more for his solemn function as protector of the state. Where Greek myth often lingers on Zeus's passions and conflicts, Roman tradition places Jupiter firmly in the realm of law and governance. He was invoked in oaths sworn by soldiers, treaties with foreign nations, even in the language of Roman law. Jupiter Lapis, Jupiter of the stone, sanctified contracts. His name itself became shorthand for legitimacy. One tale captures the Roman imagination of Jupiter. During the early wars of the Republic, when enemies threatened the city, priests and augurs read the signs of lightning to determine whether Jupiter favored battle. If lightning struck on the right side of the sky, it was good omen. If on the left, it was ill. Armies would halt, entire campaigns delayed, simply because thunder spoke otherwise. No general, no matter how bold, dared ignore Jupiter's voice. This intertwining of religion and politics made thunder not only divine spectacle, but instrument of empire. Jupiter also presided over triumphs, the grand parades held when generals returned victorious. A triumphant commander, crowned with laurel, rode through the city, ending at the temple of Jupiter on the Capitoline. There he offered sacrifice, acknowledging that victory belonged not to him alone, but to the god who sanctioned it. The thunderbolt thus became symbol of Rome's expansion. Each conquered land, each subdued enemy, was framed as Jupiter's will manifested in history. And yet Jupiter was not all severity. His Roman epithet, jovial, gives us the modern word meaning cheerful, expansive, full of good humor. Romans celebrated festivals in his honor, marked by games and feasting. Beneath the weight of empire, Jupiter was also imagined as the god of abundance, sky father whose storms nourish crops. Thunder frightened, but it also promised fertility. In this, the Roman Jupiter carried the same duality as Zeus. Destructive force and life-giver intertwine. Philosophers of Rome, influenced by Stoicism, often equated Jupiter with the rational order of the cosmos. To them, his thunder was not random, but the voice of Logos, the reason structuring the universe. Seneca wrote that lightning was no accident, but the deliberate act of divine will. This interpretation aligned with Roman ideals of law and discipline. Where Greeks often debated the morality of their gods, Romans insisted on Jupiter's role as embodiment of order. He was not just another deity among many, he was the principle that made society possible. When compared to Zeus, Jupiter seems both broader and narrower. Broader because he encompassed not only myth but civic religion, not only family but empire. Narrower because his personality was less elaborated in mythic tales. He is less the wandering lover, more the solemn judge. To the Romans, Jupiter was not entertainment. He was necessity. He stood behind every treaty, every oath, every law. Zeus might hurl bolts in myth. Jupiter's bolts could change the course of history. In modern eyes, Jupiter survives in multiple forms. Astronomers name the largest planet after him, a fitting tribute to the vastness of his presence. His Roman festivals echo in Christian liturgy, where oaths and rituals still invoke heaven's authority. His imagery of lightning persists in state symbols, military insignia, even sports logos. And his duality, cheerful abundance on one side, stern authority on the other, remains embedded in our idea of leadership. A ruler must inspire joy, but also command fear. Jupiter embodies both. There is also a subtle lesson in the Roman Jupiter. The power of thunder, not as private fear, but as public order. Where Zeus' storm might strike an oath-breaker in a household, Jupiter's storm could decide the fate of nations. He turned lightning into law, thunder into constitution, the sky itself into Rome's ally. To worship Jupiter was to see empire not as human ambition, but as divine destiny. And yet, like all thunder gods, he remains ambivalent. His favor could vanish. His omens turned dark. Rome, for all its triumphs, eventually fell. The temples crumbled, the sacrifices ceased, the Senate dissolved. Jupiter's voice, once decisive, faded into silence, but the echoes remain. Even now, when lightning splits the sky, we feel something of what the Romans felt. The awe of a force that can halt armies, the sense that destiny itself might be written in thunder. So who was Jupiter, truly? Not only Zeus in another tongue, he was thunder transformed into law, lightning wielded as instrument of empire. He was the sky enthroned on the Capitoline, watching as Rome grew from village to republic to empire. He was the reminder that no treaty, no law, no battle could proceed without heaven's sanction. And perhaps above all, he was the Roman answer to the eternal question. How do you bind men together into something greater than themselves? Their answer was thunder, and they called it Jupiter. If Zeus and Jupiter sit enthroned in palaces of marble and cloud, Thor walks among storms with hammer in hand. He is not distant king, but close protector, not ruler of Olympus or Capitoline law, but defender of fields, homes, and humanity itself. To the Norse, Thor was not an abstraction of empire or cosmic justice. He was muscle, courage, and thunder made flesh, the god who fought so that ordinary people might live another day beneath a hostile sky. In the icy Northlands where the Norse lived, thunder was not a faraway spectacle, but a constant reminder of nature's violence. Lightning split fjords, storms crashed against longships, and winter itself seemed a battle between life and annihilation. For these seafaring warriors and farmers, the storm was both enemy and necessity. Out of that world Thor emerged, red-bearded, iron-gloved, carrying the hammer Mjölnir that split the sky and crushed giants. If Zeus was king, Thor was champion. His strength was not only admired but relied upon. Thor's weapon, Mjölnir, is among the most iconic symbols in myth. Forged by dwarves, so heavy it could flatten mountains, yet small enough to be worn as an amulet, it was more than a tool of destruction. Mjölnir consecrated marriages, blessed births, and warded off evil. It destroyed, yes, but it also protected. That dual role mirrored thunder itself, terrifying in its strike, yet followed by rains that nourished the land. To hold Mjölnir was to hold both judgment and fertility. For the Norse, who carved its image into stones and wore it as talismans, the hammer was faith itself, visible, tangible, immediate. The myths of Thor are tales of struggle, humor, and inevitability. In one story, he faces Jörmungandr, the world's serpent so vast it encircles the earth. In a fishing boat, Thor casts his line, baiting the serpent with an ox head. The two lock in combat, Thor straining to drag the beast from the depths, the serpent thrashing waves into mountains. Lightning crackles, thunder roars. But before Thor can land the killing blow, his companion, terrified, cuts the line. The serpent sinks back into the sea. The myth is both thrilling and frustrating. Thor nearly ends chaos, but the victory slips away. It foreshadows Ragnarok, the end of days, when Thor and Jörmungandr will meet again, each fated to slay the other. That theme, struggle without resolution, is central to Thor's image. He is always fighting giants, trolls, serpents, forces of chaos. He wins again and again, yet chaos always returns. Unlike Zeus, whose titanomachy secured permanent kingship, Thor never establishes eternal order. His battles are endless, his victories temporary, and that is precisely why the Norse loved him. He did not guarantee peace, he guaranteed resistance. He was the god who never stopped fighting for them, even knowing fate was against him. Thor also appears in lighter myths, where his brute force contrasts with cunning adversaries. In one famous tale, giants challenge him to contests, drinking from a horn, lifting a cat, wrestling an old woman. Thor fails each test until the truth is revealed. The horn was the ocean itself, which he nearly drained. The cat was Jörmungandr, whom he lifted enough to terrify the world. The old woman was age itself, undefeated by anyone, yet Thor forced her to one knee. These myths show Thor's paradox. He appears clumsy, straightforward, even foolish. Yet beneath the humor lies awe. His strength bends the impossible, even when he fails. Socially, Thor was the god of the common folk, while Odin, wise and cunning, was favored by kings and poets. Thor belonged to farmers, sailors, blacksmiths. He was invoked for good harvests, safe voyages, fertility, and protection against evil spirits. His hammer amulets, found across Scandinavia, show how ordinary people carried him close to their chests. He was not distant. He was personal, immediate, the god you called when the storm threatened your roof or raiders threatened your home. Thor's popularity was so deep that even after the Norse world began converting to Christianity, he remained stubbornly present. Missionaries often framed Christ as stronger than Thor, yet people quietly wore hammer pendants alongside crosses. In Iceland, tales of Thor persisted even as churches rose. The image of the thunder god could not easily be erased, for he was not only myth, he was identity. His hammer was carved into gravestones, etched into wood, whispered in prayers. Philosophically, Thor reveals a different understanding of thunder. For the Greeks and Romans, thunder was judgment and law, wielded from on high. For the Norse, thunder was protection, the booming hammer against giants. The sound of the storm was Thor riding across the sky, striking his hammer to shield Midgard, the human world. Where Zeus punished oath-breakers and Jupiter sanctified treaties, Thor's thunder was simpler, more primal, a reassurance that someone was fighting for you. It was not the voice of law, it was the roar of courage. Comparisons sharpen the image. Thor and Zeus both wield lightning, but Zeus is king, Thor is warrior. Thor and Indra both battle serpents, but Indra's victory secures waters, while Thor's battles never truly end. Thor and Raijin both embody thunder as sound, but where Raijin terrifies with his demonic drums, Thor reassures with his hammer. Each god reflects the needs of their people. For seafarers and farmers on the edge of survival, what mattered was not empire or cosmic law, but a protector who would fight until the end. In modern times, Thor has re-emerged with surprising force. His myths never truly died, but today they are retold through films, comics, and novels. Marvel's Thor, blonde-haired and heroic, carries Mjölnir not only into battle with giants, but against intergalactic threats. While heavily adapted, the core remains: strength, courage, sacrifice. In popular culture, Thor embodies the fantasy that someone stands against chaos, no matter how overwhelming. Even the comedic Thor, clumsy, fallible, self-doubting, echoes the old myths where his failures concealed deeper strength. Yet there is a philosophical lesson in Thor beyond entertainment. He embodies the truth that order is never final. Chaos always returns, the serpent always stirs, the giants never sleep. Unlike Zeus, who established eternal kingship, Thor fights knowing he will one day fall. His courage lies not in the inevitability of victory, but in defiance of fate. To follow Thor is to embrace the struggle, to accept that even when death is certain, resistance still matters. His thunder is not only power, it is defiance made sound. When thunder rolls across the northern skies today, we can imagine Thor riding in his chariot, goats pulling him across the clouds, hammer striking. We can hear in that rumble not the judgment of a king, but the promise of a protector. His presence reassures. The fight goes on, even if it cannot be won forever. And perhaps that is why Thor endures. He does not offer perfection or permanence. He offers persistence. And sometimes that is the most divine gift of all. Long before Zeus hurled his lightning from Olympus or Thor raised his hammer against giants, another thunderer's voice rolled across the hymns of humanity. His name was Indra. In the Rig Veda, the oldest sacred text of India, composed more than 3,000 years ago, Indra thunders as the mightiest of gods, wielder of the vajra, slayer of serpents, liberator of waters. To understand him is to step into one of the earliest surviving visions of a thunder god, a vision at once fierce, intoxicating, and profoundly human. Indra's story begins not with temples of marble or statues of gold, but with song. The Vedic poets, the rishis, sang hymns around fires, their verses rising with smoke to the sky. Again and again, they praised Indra, breaker of forts, drinker of soma, wielder of the thunderbolt. In these hymns, thunder is not distant judgment, but immediate presence. The sky rumbles, and Indra is here, victorious, laughing, exulting in strength. For the early Indo-Aryans, who depended on rains for crops and rivers for survival, Indra was more than myth. He was life itself. The central myth of Indra is the slaying of Vritra, the great serpent or dragon who hoarded the world's waters. Vritra coiled around rivers, locking them in drought, suffocating the earth with dryness. Armed with the vajra, a thunderbolt weapon forged by the divine artisan Tvester, Indra struck. The sky split, thunder roared, lightning pierced the serpent's coils. Vritra fell, and the waters gushed forth, rivers once more flowing across the land. It is a myth of cosmic liberation, thunder as victory, storm as life-bringer. Every rainfall after drought was heard as Indra's triumph replayed. The symbolism is deep. Where Zeus's Titanomachy established order, Indra's battle with Vritra released fertility. The thunder god here is not just warrior but rainbringer, the one who turns chaos into nourishment. His storms are feared, yes, but also prayed for. Too little rain meant famine, too much meant flood. To worship Indra was to balance fear and gratitude, to live always on the edge of necessity. Indra's character is richly human. Unlike the remote dignity of Jupiter or the stubborn perseverance of Thor, Indra is passionate, flawed, exuberant. He drinks vast quantities of soma, the sacred intoxicant, until he swells with might. He boasts of his victories, sings of his strength, demands recognition. In some hymns, he even hesitates before battle, needing encouragement. This makes him relatable, not just divine, but familiar. He is the thunder god with appetites, with doubts, with triumphs that must be won anew each time. In Vedic society, Indra's role was paramount. Kings performed rituals to him before war, hoping his thunderbolt would shatter enemy forts. Farmers prayed for his rains to nourish crops. Priests offered soma in elaborate ceremonies, chanting hymns that called him down from the sky to share in the drink. He was not distant on a mountaintop. He was invoked in every struggle, every harvest, every storm. To live in the Vedic world was to live under Indra's gaze. Yet Indra is not only celebrated. Later texts reveal a more complicated figure. As Hinduism developed, other gods rose. Vishnu the preserver, Shiva the destroyer, Devi the goddess. Indra, once supreme, became less central. Stories portray him as jealous of rivals, fearful of losing status, even tricked by demons or humbled by sages. His thunderbolt still strikes, but he is no longer unquestioned king. Some myths show him defeated or punished for arrogance. In this, Indra reflects a profound cultural shift. The thunder god, once ultimate, becomes one among many, his power relativized in a vast pantheon, and yet his legacy lingers. The very idea of the thunder god slaying the serpent echoes across Indo-European myth. Zeus battles Typhon, Thor wrestles Jörmungandr, Perun in Slavic lore smites dragons. All may descend from Indra's archetype, the serpent slayer, liberator of waters. Linguists trace the root of Indra in Zeus pater back to Proto-Indo-European traditions. Indra is not only a Vedic god, but perhaps one of the oldest surviving memories of the thunder archetype. His weapon, the vajra, is itself a symbol of paradox. In the Rig Veda, it is thunderbolt, irresistible strike. In later Buddhism, it becomes diamond scepter, symbol of indestructible wisdom. Thus, Indra's thunder lives on, transformed into philosophy, his storm weapon turning into spiritual metaphor. What began as lightning becomes enlightenment. If we compare Indra with Zeus, their similarities are striking. Both are serpent slayers, both wield thunderbolts, both kings of gods in their prime. Yet where Zeus becomes a lawgiver and king of Olympus, Indra is closer to the soil, rain giver, intoxicated warrior, protector of rivers. If Zeus embodies order, Indra embodies release. His thunder does not only punish, it frees. His story is less about hierarchy than about flow, the unbinding of waters, the unleashing of life. Indra's relevance did not vanish with his decline. In Hindu festivals, echoes of his rain-bringing power persist. Farmers still speak of monsoons with reverence, invoking Indra's name. In literature and art, he appears as a complex, almost tragic figure. The once great god whose throne slipped away, yet whose thunder still rolls in memory. And in comparative mythology, he is recognized as the seed of an archetype that shaped half the world's imagination of storm. What does Indra mean for us today? He shows us that thunder gods need not be perfect rulers or distant kings. They can be flawed, human-like, intoxicated by joy, shaken by doubt, yet still essential. Indra's greatness is not in flawlessness, but in victory despite excess. His storms remind us that life is messy, that rain falls unevenly, that survival often comes not from purity, but from struggle and imperfection. In his laughter, his boasting, his thunder, we hear something deeply human, the celebration of strength in the midst of chaos. When the monsoon rains fall across India, drumming on rooftops, flooding fields, greening the parched earth, one can still imagine Indra overhead, laughing with thunder, pouring out the waters once withheld by serpent coils. He may not rule Olympus or capital. He may not be worshipped in temples of gold, but he endures in every storm that turns drought to abundance. His thunder is both battle cry and blessing, reminder that chaos can be defeated, even if only for a season. And so Indra joins the great company of thunderers, Zeus, Jupiter, Thor, Raijin, not as a forgotten relic, but as ancestor. His voice, sung in the Rig Veda, is perhaps the oldest thunder still echoing in human memory. And when we ask why nearly every culture imagined a stormbringer, Indra stands near the beginning of the answer. Because thunder was not only fear, but liberation. In the mist-shrouded islands of Japan, where the seasons turn with sudden storms and rice paddies depend on rain as much as sun, the thunder god takes a different shape. He is not a distant sky father seated upon a throne, nor a warrior king crowned with law. He is Raijin, demon-faced, drum-beating, wild as the storm itself. To hear thunder in Japan was not simply to imagine a ruler or protector, but to feel the presence of a fearsome kami whose chaos could both devastate and bless. Raijin's image is unforgettable. His body swirls with muscle, his face twisted in ferocity, his hair bristling like lightning itself. Around him float great drums, each inscribed with the Tomoe symbol, spirals that echo the endless churn of storm. With sticks in hand, he beats the skins, and each strike becomes thunder rolling across the valleys. Lightning is his rhythm, storm his song. While other thunder gods hurl bolts or wield hammers, Raijin makes music, a terrifying symphony that shakes the earth. In Japanese mythology, Raijin often appears alongside his brother, Fujin, the god of wind. The two travel together, companions of storm, their powers inseparable. Where Fujin unleashes gales that bend trees and scatter roofs, Raijin follows with the crash of thunder and the downpour of rain. Together they embody the tempest in its totality, air and sound, wind and strike. For a nation of islands where typhoons arrive with destructive regularity, these two gods were not distant abstractions, but lived realities. When the skies darkened, The people saw Raijin and Fujin riding the storm. And yet Raijin was not only a figure of terror. In the Shinto tradition, he was ambivalent, feared, appeased, but also venerated as protector. Farmers prayed to him for rain to nourish the rice fields. Villages offered rituals to keep him from striking granaries. Parents told children that Raijin might eat their belly buttons if they left them uncovered during storms, a playful yet chilling warning to respect his presence. This mixture of fear, reverence, and humor reveals his nature. Not entirely cruel, not entirely kind, but undeniably powerful. One of Raijin's most enduring roles was as defender. In legend, when the great Mongol fleets attempted to invade Japan in the 13th century, storms destroyed them. Storms the Japanese called kamikaze, the divine wind. While Fujin's gusts scattered the ships, it was Raijin's thunder and lightning that were imagined pounding the enemy from the sky. For centuries afterward, Raijin was remembered not only as Stormbringer, but as guardian of the nation, whose drums had beaten invaders back into the sea. The presence of Raijin is still visible today in Japanese art and architecture. Temples often feature statues of Raijin and Fujin at their gates, guardians warding off evil spirits. These figures, muscular and fierce, are frozen in mid-motion, their drums hovering, their eyes bulging with intensity. To pass between them is to acknowledge the power of the storm and to ask their protection. Few deities are so physically embedded into the daily landscape, carved into the very thresholds of sacred space. Raijin's symbolism differs subtly from that of Zeus or Thor. Thunder here is not primarily law or heroic battle. It is rhythm, sound, and cycle. Japanese culture has long emphasized harmony and balance, and Raijin, for all his ferocity, is part of that balance. Storms may destroy, but they also cleanse and renew. Rice, the staple of life, depends on rain, and so thunder is not only fearsome, but essential. In this way, Raijin embodies the paradox of the storm as life-giver and life-taker, a force to fear, but also to thank. Myths often portray Raijin as wild, sometimes uncontrollable. In Buddhist stories, he is captured by the great figures Shotoku Taishi, or bound by temple guardians, his power restrained to protect humanity. Yet even in chains, he remains respected, his energy acknowledged as necessary. To bind Raijin was never to erase him, but to channel him, to accept that storm cannot be abolished, only guided. This reflects a wider Japanese view of nature, not something to dominate, but something to live with, even when dangerous. Comparing Raijin to other thunder gods highlights his uniqueness. Like Thor, he is a defender, his storms turning against invaders. Like Indra, he brings rain essential for crops. Yet unlike Zeus or Jupiter, he is not enthroned as king. He is closer to chaos itself, feared and propitiated rather than adored as lawgiver. In this sense, Raijin complements the Japanese pantheon, where kami embody not abstract order, but concrete forces of nature. Where Zeus says, "I rule," Raijin says, "I roar." In popular culture, Raijin has never faded. His image appears in ukiyo-e prints, manga, anime, and video games. Children still know his name, often in playful warnings about thunder. Tourists see his statues at Kyoto's Sanjusangan-do or Tokyo's Sensoji, standing watch over temple gates. He is one of the most enduring kami in Japanese imagination, bridging folk tales and high art, religion, and entertainment. The storm he represents may have scientific explanations now, but his drums still beat in the culture, and Raijin carries a philosophical lesson. His storms remind us that chaos is not enemy alone, but part of the cycle of life. Without rain, no rice. Without storm, no renewal. His terrifying face is also a mask of necessity. To live in his world is to live with ambiguity, fear and gratitude inseparable, destruction and fertility bound together. Raijin teaches that the forces we most fear are often the very ones we most depend on. When thunder rolls across Japan today, striking mountains and rattling windows, one can still imagine Raijin crouched among the clouds, beating his drums with wild joy. Each rumble is a note in his symphony, each flash of lightning a pulse of his fury. For some, it is only weather. For others, it is still Kami. Either way, the experience remains the same. Awe at a force that dwarfs us, humbles us, and yet sustains us. And so Raijin stands among the great thunder gods, Zeus, Jupiter, Thor, Indra, as unique voice. He is not king, not conqueror, not eternal judge. He is storm in its rawest form, chaotic, rhythmic, creative, terrifying. His thunder is not verdict or edict, but drumbeat, reminding us that life is not only order, but also storm. In his roar, we hear not just fear, but the rhythm of existence itself. Across cultures, from the marble heights of Olympus to the storm-swept fjords of the north, from the river plains of India to the temples of Japan, the thunder god appears again and again. Zeus, Jupiter, Thor, Indra, Raijin. 5 names, 5 faces, but beneath them a single archetype. Humanity's attempt to give voice to the storm. To compare them is not to flatten their differences, but to see the threads that bind them together and the crossroads where their meanings diverge. What strikes first is the shared symbolism. All 5 are storm bringers, armed with weapons that channel lightning into purpose. Zeus' bolt forged by the Cyclopes, Jupiter's flashing omens, Thor's hammer Mjölnir, Indra's vajra, Raijin's drums. The forms differ, yet each captures thunder as tool, not accident. The storm is never random. It is aimed, it speaks, it has intention. The universality of this idea suggests something primal. When thunder shook ancient skies, people everywhere felt not chaos but command, not noise but message. And yet the nature of that message differs. For the Greeks, Zeus' lightning was law. He punished oath-breakers, defended strangers, enforced hospitality. For the Romans, Jupiter's thunder ratified the state, sanctioning wars and suspending assemblies. Thunder there was civic voice, the very constitution spoken through the sky. In the north, Thor's hammer was not law but shield. His thunder reassured ordinary people that chaos was being fought back, that giants and serpents would not overwhelm their fragile farms. In India, Indra's thunder was liberation. His strike against Vritra did not establish hierarchy so much as release waters, turning death into fertility. And in Japan, Raijin's drums were rhythm itself, chaotic, terrifying, but also life-giving, the storm as necessary cycle rather than verdict. Through these differences, we glimpse how each culture answered the same question. What do storms mean? For the Greeks and Romans, storms reinforced authority. For the Norse, storms embodied courage. For the Vedic Indians, storms unlocked life. For the Japanese, storms embodied balance between fear and necessity. The archetype is the same, but the meaning shifts with geography, politics, and daily need. There are also patterns of kinship. Zeus and Indra mirror one another as serpent slayers, liberators who turn chaos into cosmos. Thor and Raijin both act as defenders, their thunder resounding not in palaces, but in the defense of common people. Jupiter and Zeus appear almost identical, yet their functions diverge. Zeus is mythic king, Jupiter political anchor. When placed side by side, these gods reveal the adaptability of thunder. It can become law, protection, fertility, or rhythm. Yet it is always power beyond human control. Another common thread is duality. None of these gods are purely benevolent. Zeus punishes with cruelty as easily as he protects. Jupiter halts armies with dark omens. Thor smashes giants but cannot prevent his own fated death. Indra liberates rivers, but also succumbs to jealousy and arrogance. Raijin brings rain, but also threatens famine. In each, thunder is both blessing and curse, feared and worshipped, destructive yet sustaining. This duality mirrors human experience itself. Power is never simple, nature is never safe, life is never without risk. And there is the question of permanence. Zeus secured eternal kingship. His titanomachy was final. Jupiter's rule extended as long as Rome's empire endured, yet faded with its fall. Thor's battles never end. His victories are temporary, his doom inevitable at Ragnarok. Indra's supremacy waned as other gods rose. He shifted from king to secondary figure, yet his archetype survived. Raijin was never sovereign at all. He remained a force, a kami among many, less ruler than rhythm. These contrasts reveal how different cultures understood order. Some as eternal, some as fragile, some as cyclical. Yet despite divergence, all five share one thing. They made thunder personal. The storm was not an impersonal force of nature. It was the voice of someone. That someone could be king, warrior, drinker of soma, demon-faced drummer. But always a presence, always a reminder that the sky is not silent. Humanity's instinct was not only to fear the storm, but to speak back to it, to tell stories that made it neighbor, judge, protector, or adversary. Today, science has explained the storm. Lightning is the sudden discharge of electricity, thunder the shock wave of heated air. Yet explanation does not erase meaning. We still call storms acts of God. We still imagine heroes with lightning at their fists. We still use thunder as metaphor for power, for inspiration, for awe. The old gods have changed shape, but their voices remain in our language, our art, our imagination. To compare them is to see not only difference of culture, but unity of experience. Beneath every myth, a single truth. The storm speaks and humanity answers. The storm fades. The sky, once split by lightning, grows quiet again. In that silence, we are left not only with the memory of Zeus's thunderbolt, Jupiter's omens, Thor's hammer, Indra's vajra, Raijin's drums, but with the question that summoned them into being: why did we imagine gods in the storm? Perhaps because thunder is the closest thing in nature to a divine voice, sudden, unavoidable, commanding. It does not ask for attention, it takes it. It tells us with no words at all that we are small and fragile beneath an immense sky. And faced with that reminder, we reach for meaning. We gave the storm a name, a face, a story. To look across these gods is to see humanity itself reflected. In Zeus, the longing for order and kingship. In Jupiter, the need for law and civic destiny. In Thor, the desire for a protector who will fight, even knowing defeat awaits. In Indra, the thirst for rain, for life released from drought. In Raijin, the acceptance that chaos itself can be rhythm, that fear and fertility walk hand in hand. Each god is a mirror of what their people most needed, and together they show us how myth is not escape from reality, but a way of shaping it. The thunder god is not fantasy. He is the storm made human so that we could live with it. But there is another truth hidden in these stories. Thunder gods are never perfect. Zeus is flawed, Jupiter ambiguous, Thor doomed, Indra excessive, Raijin frightening. Their power is not clean. It is messy, dangerous, double-edged. And maybe that is why they endure, because they do not promise us a world free of fear, but a way of living with it. They remind us that authority is never pure, protection never absolute, victory never final. Yet even so, we fight, we hope, we listen. Their imperfection is our own, magnified into the sky. And so the thunder gods still speak. When lightning flashes today, we may hear only the crackle of electrons, but something deeper stirs. The old awe, the old questions. Who rules the storm? What power lies beyond us? Are we merely alone beneath the sky, or are we still in some way in conversation with it? The myths do not answer. They leave us with mystery, and perhaps that is their gift. To carry these stories forward is not only to remember ancient belief, but to ask what they say about us now. In an age of science, of satellites and forecasts, the storm still shakes us. We still write it into films and novels, still turn thunder into music and symbol. The gods of storm remain, if not on altars, then in imagination, reminding us that awe is not something to outgrow. Awe is a human constant, as necessary as food or fire. And so, as this journey with thunder gods closes, another question opens. If storms led us to imagine kings in the sky, what did oceans inspire? What did the darkness of the underworld, or the blazing of the sun, or the shifting of the moon, awaken in us? Each force of nature became a god, each god a mirror, each mirror a lesson. This series will continue with those tales. Different voices, different powers, but always the same search. What do the forces of the cosmos say about us? Until then, when thunder rolls again and the sky lights with fire, pause for a moment. Do not rush indoors. Listen. Hear in the rumble not only physics, but echoes of Zeus, Jupiter, Thor, Indra, Raijin. Echoes of humanity's oldest question, what lies beyond the storm? If that question stirs you, then join us again. Share these stories, subscribe to this journey, and let us keep walking together through the light and shadow of the gods.